Hi everybody. For those that do not know me, my name is Rebecca. For those that do know me and have noticed all the recent hair changes, yes, this is a wig. I'll talk more about why I'm wearing wigs and some of the recent changes in my life in another video at another time. But this video is going to be a discussion about depression. So depression is something that needs to be talked about more. There is still a confusion about what depression is. People still do not want to talk about it. They don't want to admit that it's something that they go through. And it's just something that really needs to be talked about, and there needs to be a greater understanding about depression. So I hope that I will accomplish some of that in this video. Mostly I want to accomplish starting a conversation. The videos that I do, I want them to be conversations. I want you to add to the conversation. If you have anything to add, please comment or leave me a message. And this probably will not be the only video I do about depression, because that conversation has to keep going. There's so many different aspects to depression and what depression is. And I know that I don't know everything there is to know about depression. And I know that there's others that know something I don't know. And so that's why it's important to engage and to talk about it. Something that has stuck with me for a long time. Several years ago, well, probably more than several years ago, I had the pleasure of going to a Beth Moore conference. And at that conference, she said something that has really stuck with me and really helped me to define who I am. And I don't remember what she said word for word, so I am paraphrasing. So she was talking about the struggles we go through in life, the pain that we go through in life, and she said something to the effect of, don't regret those things that you go through. Don't wish that you didn't go through them. Because one, it makes you who you are now. And for two, if you never go through any kind of pain or struggle, then you'll never be able to hear someone else's cry for help. And so I think that right there really speaks to the confusion about depression. People that have never gone through depression really don't understand it. And even those that have gone through depression, because it's so different for everybody, don't fully understand depression, because it's different for every individual, and there's different ways of dealing with it for every individual. So before I get started, I just want to kind of outline what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about what depression is, what it isn't, and share some of my personal experiences. There could be some triggers in this video, so if you may have issues with those triggers, I don't advise watching the remainder of the video. One of those triggers will be suicide, and I will be talking about depression through one of my pregnancies. So if either one of those topics is something that you are not ready to talk about or deal with, I advise you not watching the rest of this video. Alright, to get started, what depression isn't. A lot of people feel or think that depression is an emotion. Depression is not an emotion. Emotions are something that we go through every day, that everyone goes through. People confuse depression with sadness or grief, but those are emotions that we go through, that we deal with just like our other emotions, and that is not what depression is. American Psychiatric Association defines depression as a common and serious medical illness, and that's exactly what it is. It's a medical illness, and that would be one of the reasons why people don't want to talk about going through depression, because people do not want to admit that they, have this illness. People don't even want to call it an illness. And that's just the truth. Even I have trouble with that word. I have trouble calling depression an illness, a medical illness, but that is what it is. It is what it is, a medical illness. And we need to become more comfortable with those words. There has been this idea of, I think there's still that idea of, well, if you're dealing with depression or, something along those lines, that you're crazy. And maybe I am just a little bit crazy, but it's not the depression. I don't, that's something that we need to get over. If you are dealing with depression, you are not crazy. It's the other part of that definition is common. It's a common illness. It's common. You're not the only one going through it. And there's probably many people around you that are experiencing depression. So do not feel like you are crazy, like you can't share your experiences with somebody, because you can. And like I said, these videos are discussions. I want to continue these discussions. If you want to share your experiences, please comment or send me a message, and let's keep on talking about it, because your experience can help somebody else. Your experience can help somebody else that's going through depression, and it can help somebody that has not gone through depression, someone that don't understand. These conversations are going to help people understand what depression is, understand how to help when someone they're close to is going through depression, help them to know what the signs are, and help them to know what not to do. There's no way that the people around us are going to understand depression if we do not talk about it. We have to talk about it. And for those that have not gone through depression, I encourage you to be just willing to understand. That is the first and most important step, is to be willing to understand. When you are closed-minded and you tell somebody, oh, just get over it, then that turns people away. If you're not willing to understand, it can jeopardize your relationship with those around you. And so that's just something I would encourage you to be, keep watching this video, watch other videos about depression so that you can understand and, know more about it. So okay. I'm going to share a couple of experiences with depression in my personal life. In my personal journey, I view it as, I've experienced depression and I've overcome depression. I know many would not like the idea of overcoming, because depression does come back. But in my train of thought, just because you overcome something doesn't mean that it doesn't come back, doesn't mean that you will not, face that battle again. And also the way you overcome it will be different every time. Something else that you will notice in my videos is that I will be talking about God and my personal beliefs a lot, because for me, that though my relationship with God is what has helped me, push through. And I know that's not the case for everyone, and that's perfectly fine. That's just the case for my story. And, I have many friends with many different belief systems, and I respect that, and I embrace it, because I love diversity. And, I would never judge anybody for their beliefs. And, and I just, I ask for the same respect from those around me, and, we all get along. So, but like I said, for my personal journey, that's something that has helped me push through. And that is something that is suggested for self-help for depression and um, other things that you might go through, is finding a religion or a belief system, because that is something that can help you work through some of those thoughts and feelings. So for me, the first time I ever went through depression, dealt with depression, and at the time, I didn't know that's what you called it, was depression. I was probably 12 or 13, maybe around that area. I know I was a young teenager, early teens. Like I said, I didn't know that it was depression. I just knew that I had these overwhelming feelings and thoughts. There was just this darkness, I just couldn't push my way out of. It was very overwhelming. And depression is hard to explain because, like I said, because it's not an emotion. Sadness we can explain. We can explain why we're sad, why we're going through that. We can explain happiness. We can explain grief. Depression is hard to explain because you don't know why you're going through this. You don't know why you're having these feelings and thoughts. I think the best explanation for me, and this is a great analogy for the time, but it's like there's this huge wall in front of you that you need to get over. And you have all the tools to do it, but it's like your body is frozen and you just can't get there. Like, you know that you shouldn't be having these thoughts and these feelings, and you know that you need to not get over them. I hate that saying, to get over it, because you can't just get over it, but you know that you need to work through them. You know that you need to, that they're not I don't know, you just know that you need to do something, but you just can't get there. And for me, it became very dark. Like, I got to a point where I felt like I already didn't exist. I know that may not make sense to a lot of people, but I felt like I already didn't exist, and like I needed to take those next steps to complete that feeling, I guess. At that age and back then, I didn't know it was called suicide. I didn't know, I never heard of suicide. We didn't have social media back then, so stories weren't shared like they are today. I didn't know any of that. I just knew that I didn't exist. I needed to not exist because I had no place. I felt like I had no worth. I felt like I didn't know who I was. And like I said earlier, depression is not an emotion, but there are emotions and things that we go through that can trigger depression. And I guess, and I think maybe my grief from losing my grandfather when I was 11 may have triggered this depression. It was something that was very difficult for me, and I didn't know how to work through it. And and that's I feel like that may have been something that triggered it. But so like I said, I had this just overwhelming feeling that I already didn't exist, and like I just needed to I guess make that feeling a reality. I don't know how better to explain it. But I remember writing down ways to accomplish that. Like I said, I didn't know anything about suicide. I didn't know what it was, and I didn't know how to do it either, except for, what I had seen on TV and, heard in conversations. And so I guess I was kind of brainstorming in a sense. And this next part is going to sound really crazy to some people. It doesn't to me now because of my personal beliefs, but I can understand why you might think it's strange. But I heard this voice, and it sounded like my grandfather's voice, and he said, "You can't do this because you are needed here. Your mother needs you." I remember arguing with the voice for a while, but I eventually said, "Fine, I won't do it." And and I didn't understand that until later on in my life. And that's not something I'm going to talk about, because that's not just my story to share, and I'm not going to share somebody else's story without their permission. But I'll just say that I did come to understand that my mom did need me, and how devastating something like that could have been. But those feelings and thoughts didn't go away. The depression didn't go away. So there was a time that I had visited a church. I didn't necessarily like it. The people kind of scared me. I had a lot of people telling me they loved me, hugging me, kissing me on my forehead, and it freaked me out. But come to find out later that many of those people knew my grandparents. I just didn't know that. So it wasn't as weird as I initially thought. But I just had no desire to be at church. There were some kids at school that kept asking me why I hadn't gone back, inviting me to go back, and eventually I gave in and I went back. And it definitely changed my life, and I still believe to this day that it saved my life. That God saved my life at that time, because church was exactly what I needed at that time. But the depression still didn't go away for a while. The moment that it went away was there was a special speaker at church, and he was talking about joy. And I was thinking to myself, man, I don't know what joy feels like right now. I can't remember the last time that I was just truly, honestly joyful. And so at the end of his message, he called people up to pray. If you need joy in your life, then come let me pray for you, something like that. And I went up there when he prayed for me. And again, this is something that not everybody may believe. There are witnesses out there that can, vouch for this story. It sounds, way out there. And I promise my next story is not, as divine. There's not a super divine intervention like in this one. But as a teenager dealing with depression, I think it's even harder, because you don't know who you are. You don't know how to deal with it. But anyway, so I went up there for prayer, and when he prayed for me, I felt what joy was at that time. I started laughing for no reason, and I couldn't stop laughing, and I laughed for days. Like, that was the first time I felt pure joy, and it was like the joy, the light pushed out that darkness finally after several years. That was probably when I was about 14 or 15. So it was several years of depression and just, And it was like that joy that I felt that day, overcome that depression. And like I said earlier, that finding a religion or a belief system is a recommendation for, you know, for depression. And, maybe that experience is what I needed to work through the depression at that time. And, that moment completely changed my life and the way I viewed life. So, the next story I want to share, and I'm not going to share everything. There's some things I'd rather keep private. I would probably share them if I was in, a one-on-one conversation with somebody, but for this, I'm not going to share every detail. But with my second pregnancy, I was extremely depressed. I think as an adult, that was the lowest I ever felt. And it's hard to even say that. It's really hard to even say that. I hid the pregnancy from a lot of people. I didn't talk about it. I don't even have pictures of my pregnancy. I don't have pictures of the baby shower. During my pregnancy, I remember just sitting in the bathroom for hours and just crying, not even knowing why I was crying. It was just an overwhelming feeling of just defeat. Like I said earlier, it's hard to explain, but I was extremely depressed. I do not remember a time during that pregnancy that I was not overwhelmed by the feeling of depression. Just that feeling of being held down. Like you can't live your life. Like your life is happening in front of you, but you can't live it. Like you're just watching it on a movie screen. And talking about it now makes me really sad. In my first pregnancy, I was happy. And, I was happy with every moment. I took pictures. I, have pictures of the baby shower. I really experienced, each doctor's visit. And I was just very, emotional and passionate about it. And with my second one, it felt like I said, like I was just watching my life happen in front of me. And I couldn't be a part of it. And I felt a lot of guilt after she was born. I realized that it started coming to me that I felt like I didn't give her what I gave my first baby while I was pregnant. And it was guilt, the depression, it was guilt. I felt so guilty for being so depressed when it was not a choice I made. I didn't choose to be depressed. I didn't choose that. I wouldn't have chose that. Wouldn't have chose those feelings. But I was hard on myself for not overcoming the depression while I was still pregnant. The guilt was just eating me alive. Like it was overwhelming. I felt so guilty. And that's part of depression too. That is a symptom of depression, is guilt. And it was overwhelming. It was very overwhelming. I felt awful, and it still makes me sad to think about now. But so I feel like there's moments I didn't fully enjoy like I should have. And like I said, it was just overwhelming, and that's the only way I know how to explain it. And I didn't really work through depression until, I worked for a therapist, and so there was a moment. I don't want to explain all of that, but there was a moment where, she really helped me push forward, and I started pushing myself to just work harder at enjoying those moments, and eventually I was able to overcome that episode of depression. But so I shared those experiences, to let people know that they are not alone. If you are experiencing depression, it's common. Like I said in that definition, the American Psychiatric Association definition says it's a common and serious medical illness. It's okay to reach out for help. If your family members are not listening or trying to understand, find someone. I'm going to list the link to the American Psychiatric Association in the description of this video. You can find more information there. I have more experiences, but I'll probably save those for another video because, like I said, I want the conversation to continue. And this probably won't be the only video on depression, but the main goal is for you to not feel like you're alone, for you to feel comfortable talking about it, because the more we talk about it, the more we learn to push through it, because there are medical treatments, there are medicines, drugs that you can take for it, but there's also self-help ways to work through it. And number one on that list is talking to someone. If the first person you talk to is not understanding and makes insensitive comments, don't stop there. Don't feel like you're broken. Don't feel that way. Go to another person, talk to someone else until you find someone that is willing to listen, willing to try to understand. Another way to self-help is increasing physical activity. So, physical activity, exercise, I know people are so scared of that word. Do not be scared of that word, because exercise can be simply walking around the block a few times. If you are feeling overwhelmed, push yourself to get up. No matter how hard it is, push yourself to get up and walk around the block a couple of times. Because exercising, number one, it shifts your focus, because that's something that you need to work on in depression, is shifting your focus to from all of those negative, overwhelming thoughts to something positive, something you enjoy. If it's not exercise, then some painting, taking pictures, that's something that shifts my focus, is going out with my camera and just taking pictures, because I'm looking for those moments, I'm looking for those beautiful shots, and that's something that shifts that focus. But physical activity also releases endorphins. It changes your sense of well-being, and so that's why I say physical activity, try it and see how it works. Also, changing your diet. Something that I've learned in my psychology classes is that food is considered a drug, because different foods have different effects on your the way your brain operates, the way it receives and sends signals. And so changing your diet can help. Getting rid of artificial colorings and additives and things like that, and eating more organic and fresh. Those are just some self-help suggestions. There's many out there. If you have self-help ideas, please share them, because we all have different ways of dealing, and your way of dealing may help someone else. So some of the symptoms, I would like to read these symptoms because it's important for people to realize that the popular thing right now is on Facebook, sharing those posts that says what depression looks like, and it's people that we've lost that are generally happy, and that is something to think about, because I know when I've dealt with depression, I tend to try to fill my life with noise, with things that distract, and I don't want people to think that I'm broken, that there's something wrong, and so I try to make my life seem as normal as possible during those times. And so that is something to think about. Now, not every happy person is depressed. There's different ways. If you see changes in someone that you care about, don't be afraid to ask and start a conversation. Maybe they're just, maybe they just have a personal change, but, it could also be something greater. So these are some of the symptoms that are listed on the website. Feeling sad or having a depressed mood, loss of interest or pleasures in activities once enjoyed. And in some of my depression experiences, in some of them, like I said, I filled my life with noise to distract me. In others, it was, I didn't want to do anything. I wanted to sit at home and watch TV and not get up. I didn't want to answer my phone. I didn't want to deal with people. I just wanted to be alone. So that's something to watch for. Changes in appetite, if they're eating more than usual or eating less than usual. Trouble sleeping or sleeping too much. If they just can't seem to get up during the day, then that is a sign. Loss of energy or increased fatigue, and really it's like a weight is on your body. Like there's a huge rock on your body and you just cannot move. Increase in purposeless physical activity or slowed movements and speech. So like pacing, playing with their hands, playing with their hair, just things that you didn't notice before that they do all the time now. Feeling worthless or guilty. It's normal to feel guilty, and it's normal to have those moments of insecurities, but when it's overwhelming, when you just can't talk them out of, that guilty feeling, make them, realize that, it's normal, it's, something that they could work through, then that is a sign. Difficulty thinking, concentrating, or making decisions. And in my moments of depression, there were times that I completely forgot conversations, or I would, I'd be in a conversation and then all of a sudden realize I have no idea what the conversation was about. It's hard to concentrate and have to do in-depth thinking during those times. And then thoughts of death or suicide. So those are just some of the symptoms. Like I said, I'm going to put that website in the description. Let's continue the conversation. If you have never experienced depression and you want to know more about it, join the conversation. If you have experiences that are different that you want to share, join the conversation. Don't be afraid to talk about it, because it's something that needs to happen. People that are going through depression need to understand it more, and people that haven't ever gone through it need to understand it more. And I look forward to talking about it more, because like I said, there will be more videos about it. And yeah, let's just continue. Keep it up. Keep talking. Keep bringing up different points, and let's bring more awareness. Let's stop those thoughts of, oh, just get over it. That's something that is very insensitive, because then somebody that's going through depression, when they hear that, they feel guilty that they can't just get over it. They feel like, what is wrong with me that I can't get over it? Like I said, it's not an emotion. That is very important to remember. It's not an emotion. It is an illness. So thank you for joining me today, and I hope you join me for the other videos. I hope you add to the conversation and bring more awareness and information out. So thank you, and I'll see you next time.